Hello, and welcome to Math Lessons with Linda. Today's topic is how to put a parabola into its vertex form by completing the square where the a value is not equal to 1. Our function today is y equals negative 2x squared plus 12x minus 21. Two things need to happen before we can complete the square. The first is that we're going to move this minus 21 to the other side of our function. So we'll have y plus 21. So this is gone. Also, if you're going to complete the square, the x squared term has to have a coefficient of 1. So what we need to do is factor out a negative 2 so that this is now just x squared. But these two terms work together when you're completing the square. So if we factor out a negative 2 from a positive 12, that turns that term also into a negative, and we have to factor out the 2. So we have a minus 6 and then the x, of course, left. So when we complete the square, we are going to be adding on the value that makes this a perfect square trinomial. And this one's a little bit different than when we have not had to factor out a coefficient with what we add to the other side. So the process for actually completing the square is the same. We divide the middle term, by 2, so we get 3, and 3 squared is 9. So it looks as if we have added 9 to the right-hand side of the equation. But remember that this 9 is part of a larger trinomial where there was a negative 2 out front. So this negative 2 now also applies to our 9. So what really happened was we put a negative 18 onto this side of our equation. To keep our equation balanced, I have to also do a negative 18 on the other side. I have to keep the values that I'm either adding or subtracting on both sides the same. So when I do that on the left, I'm going to add the 21 and the minus 18, so I get y plus 3. I'm going to keep my negative 2 coefficient out front, and then my trinomial I'm going to write as x minus 3 squared. So my trinomial now became this binomial squared. And the last thing to get it into vertex form is to move this constant back over. So I now have my negative 2, my x minus 3 squared, and now I have a minus 3. So this is vertex form of a parabola. You can tell a couple of things. First of all, we know that our vertex is now 3, negative 3. Remember, it's the opposite for the x of what it looks like. The k value, which is y, is the negative 3. Since we have a negative here in the front for our a, we know that this parabola would open down, so it would have a maximum point. And if you want, you can sketch this just to kind of get an idea of what it looks like. But here is the vertex form. Here is what the coordinates of the vertex are, and that's how you complete the square to put a parabola in vertex form.